Un despacho internacional que estará representado por Gerard Loozekoot, no sé si lo dije bien, quien es director y arquitecto senior. Entonces les voy a leer un poco la semblanza de la persona que nos acompaña hoy, un gran arquitecto. Es arquitecto desde 1998, egresado por la TU Delft. Y después de participar en varios despachos alemanes, ingresa en 2000 a UNstudio con Caroline Voss y Ben van Berkel, en el cual ha desarrollado proyectos urbanos y de infraestructura de gran escala, como el plan maestro del centro de la ciudad de Nijmegen, no lo sé, 320.000 metros cuadrados, el anillo periférico A2 en Hertogenbosch, disculparán la pronunciación, y el diseño de la prolongación de la autopista N57 en los Países Bajos. El objetivo de Gerard es la implementación de estrategias de diseño, como el concepto Deep Planning, enfocado a proyectos de infraestructura y diseño urbano. Algunos trabajos recientes son la Torre Park Regen en Arnhem, el Salón de Té en Katwijk y el Teatro de Lelystad. Como parte del despacho UNstudio, sus responsabilidades han ido desde presidir las reuniones semanales del equipo del proyecto a la organización de los diferentes equipos de proyectos y la creación de equipos multidisciplinarios con asesores y colaboradores. Su interés en la organización de los procesos del proyecto y sus contratos en estrecha colaboración con los clientes públicos y privados ha servido para fomentar las aspiraciones de la red UNstudio, y en 2005 fue invitado a unirse al equipo directivo. Desde el 2008 es socio de UNstudio. Cabe aclarar que UNstudio significa United Network Studio, es decir, una relación entre redes, es un despacho que se conecta entre personas que tienen una relación interna muy comunicativa y que plantean a partir de una plataforma de herramientas tecnológicas y de prácticamente todas las herramientas que se puede hacer una forma de hacer arquitectura muy impresionante. También he de señalar que este evento no habría sido posible sin la colaboración del maestro José Luis Álvarez y su equipo de Node. Entonces, pues ya dicho lo dicho y sin mayor preámbulo, le damos la bienvenida a Gerard. Gracias.
Thank you for the introduction. I hope you all understand English because my Spanish is quite rusty. I know a few words, but that's it. For those who are tired because of working through the night, I understood, I have a lot of images, so you just follow the images and then you're fine. First of all, I love architecture, and I think that's the key thing. Organizing the projects is something that is absolutely necessary, but I think if you see it as working with people, like in a hospital or for public services, then it becomes a lot easier, because you always have to think about with whom am I working, why do I work with them, and how could I create something that actually works, which is all about communication. And these are just images from our office. But I want to show that because I think that's it's nice also to see how we work, what we do, before going into every. First of all, do you know where the Netherlands is? Because I put this map on here. That is where Amsterdam is and the Netherlands. So it's also where some other famous architects are coming from. So we're quite proud on that. But it doesn't need more explanations than that. I think that in the Netherlands we always had a kind of a free way of communicating, and because of that we could also develop a free way of thinking. It has a downside because we have a bit of a problem with hierarchy, but in an office it's also nice that everybody is judging what you are saying. Having large meetings and small meetings about projects is one of the key things, but in the end it's also about having a bit of fun in that what we are doing. For instance, when we are working on a project of Mercedes and we are buying 50 of these small cars, you know, everybody, I mean, we lost half of the cars before the project was finished because everybody was taking the cars, putting it on their own table, which is a problem if you want to design a good building. But also our model workshops, this project is highly confidential, and we are in the last 2 for the marina of the Emir of Qatar. But here you see that the model is under construction, and we are discussing if it's the right color and the right way of approaching it. And well, we were doubting it a bit because, as you see, we don't have any color. It's fully white, but in reality, the building will have some color. So it's always a discussion about what should we do. Next to the computer, we work a lot with models. Models are accessible, you can easily produce them, and you can test really how spaces are working. But in reality, we also have to go through big manuals to evaluate if the quality of the product is actually there. On site, we work with large mock-ups. It's the same as a model, but then in one-to-one scale. The reason why we do that is because we can then test if the contractor understands what we mean with a nice and flat surface. And if we can approve that by signing it off, then during the construction period, we can always refer back to our mock-ups. We do that also for the facades. Sometimes it goes wrong, so you see a part of the team desperately thinking about how to solve it. And then we go back to our drawing boards and sketches and continue working. Sometimes this is an engineer. The engineer does not believe our vision on structure. We, however, are very enthusiastic and motivated to explain him why we think it is possible. And I think when I go through the projects, you understand why we have to be super positive. So I think one of the challenges is, as an architect, to never get depressed and to be always super positive. And that's really an advice I would like to give you. Because in the end, everybody you will meet who's working on your project, trying to build it, will tell you that it's not possible, or that it's too expensive, that it's not within the planning budget, and everything else they can mention, because these are different values, different parameters. For us as architects, we value money different than quality. And quality is having a different value, and I think it's a language that we know, and that we always have to explain to clients and other advisors. So we are traveling a lot, and we want to organize knowledge. I think knowledge is something that can really help us convincing clients to believe in what we are doing. So this is an smoke exhaust when there's fire in a building, and the smoke exhaust is actually a tornado. We got in the Guinness Book of Records with this tornado as the biggest tornado inside of a building, which is nice and funny actually. But we could prevent that you need smoke screens. And because you didn't need the smoke screens, we saved between 10 and 15% of the construction budget. And you have to imagine these are large numbers in a building of 200 million. And we could actually reinvest, in our opinion, the money back into architecture. So this is a very simple diagram. It's floating around already for, I think, 20, 30 years. But it says something about what happens now. You know, there's a lot of information and a lot of data accessible. Everybody with a smartphone or Wikipedia knows already what to find and how to react on everything. But it's not only about the data, it's also about gaining the knowledge and make the right decisions. And when you make the right decisions, and that's called wisdom, the value is going to be increased. This is the best argument against you are not within the budget. One example, if you build an office building, and the average sick leave is in Europe, for instance, 3.6%, and you reduce that with 0.1 or 0.2%, the fee that the companies are paying for their employees is so much reduced with reducing the sick leave that you can pay an entire building for it over the span of 20 years. For large corporations where we work with, it's something they also believe in, these kind of arguments, because they know to get the best people and the best trained staff, they need to have a building which has the same quality and the same talent. So I mentioned already Mercedes. And this is an image which is an old image, but I still like to use it because it shows actually the first Photoshop artwork. This is the first time somebody in Photoshop made an illustration where the human being, a snake and a lion are actually in one image without seeing the seams. So this was the end of a collage period. So we, in our buildings, would like to generate something which is exactly the same. We don't want to see what the structure engineer is doing, MIP, acoustics, or another advisor. We want to have one integrated building because we think that's really giving you the way or the feeling and the quality of space. For that we developed also knowledge platforms inside our office. So in our office, everybody who starts to work there is not only working on projects, is also working on developing knowledge. To do that, we set up researches, typical researches, and based not only on architecture, but also on the technology. So what technology is available, health and well-being, what's the key thing people are dying from, for instance, or city pollutions like in Beijing. Economy, a parameter you cannot neglect. It's crucial in every negotiation. But also politics and society. You need support from politics and the society, bottom up or top down, to achieve your projects. And the same as with culture. We think architects are not artists, but they are very close to artists. So the cultural parameter is also crucial in the way how research works. Which means that if you design a table, we think a table should be more than only a table. It should actually invite you to interact, to think, to bring you one step further. The same as with a building. If you want to have people moving up in a retail building, because square meter prices are on the ground floor more expensive than one level higher. So the higher you get into the building, the lower the square meter price is. But as an architect, if you can bring in the people higher into the building, the value of the building increases. Well, every developer likes that, but look at this. This is not a great image to present something like that. Without, I mean, if I would have presented it without a story about economics, no developer would step into it actually. The same as with pavilions, playing fields. Not only the pavilions itself, but also the way how you could test an experiment with pavilions is actually great. You could really look at seamless materials, you could look at how it could become a playing scape, but also how you could frame pieces of a city. And I think there's a lot happening at the moment in the computer developments, the software developments. And one of the things we think is fantastic is that you can have new CFD analysis for calculating wind patterns. And for this project, we said we are calculating with CFD analysis if you can get the wind to 20 meters height. You have to imagine the project is close to Shanghai. Shanghai is super polluted. This is Hangzhou, where the people from Shanghai normally have their holiday home. In this area, if we can get the wind to 20 meters, we can get a small draft, and because of the draft, we can cool down the lower level, the first 1.5 to 2 meters. And we calculated it with the engineers that it would be around 8 to 10 degrees cooling down, just by the wind that you already have. The only thing you have to do is make a canyon of 1.5 kilometers and around 400 meters wide. But to do that, of course, you need to densify the program on the sites. So as a master plan and as a project, we think it's crucial to, if you want to make cities healthier and lively, you have to also look at these kinds of solutions or different solutions than the standard urban grids. So using the wind, you can do in a lot of ways. So this is, for instance, a large building we are doing in the Netherlands. It's actually a tax office. And This is Robert Filippi, and he's one of our engineers, and he's standing in a duct. And we designed a duct in the building that runs around the entire building on the 11th floor. And because of the wind pressure to the building, you get pressure on all the ducts in the building. So the wind is actually putting the ducts under pressure. And because of that, you don't need fans. So you don't have to put fans on. And if you don't put the fans on, you save 10 to 15% of the energy bill every year. And what we do is we close the lamellas, and we open the lamellas depending on the direction of the wind. So if the wind changes, the lamellas are closing and opening. And here you see the lamellas. But it's, I think, ways of designing sustainable, but on a kind of innovative way. And we think that there's a lot of potential. And the last few days that I was here in Mexico, I would say we have quite some wind. So it would be good also to use that in projects. I think it would be nice to see how to cool down a city. I mean, the advantages of Mexico that the city is very big and not a lot of super high rises, which means you could actually use that. There are some, I think, interesting concepts that can be developed and used. You can even go further. So this is the biggest challenge of the European Union. Rifkin is their main advisor. Rifkin says we need a new revolution because we are running out of gas and oil. We need renewable energy. Building needs to become power plants, literally. But he also said storage needs to be developed for energy, because energy that's being created during the night or during the day, you cannot store it anywhere. It's just gone. And that counts for the entire European Union, actually. So what we do, as the Netherlands, for instance, our energy plants keep on running through the night, but they produce too much energy. So we sell it to Austria and Norwegian, and they use it to pump water, literally, back into the lakes, and then during the day, the water falls down again and generates energy. So for the World Expo in Astana, we proposed these huge water towers that actually could generate energy or store energy during the days. So I think there are a lot of ideas to still work on to make the world healthier, better, and more sustainable. And I think one of the things that we are fascinated in is color, and I think that's something that's really not new for you. Because if I see how much color you're using, I think your discussions with the clients about colors are a lot less than we are having, which is actually quite great. This is a research we did in the past, and we said the key things that we still have to work on is the cultural connector, the social activator, and the public attractor. These are 3 points that I would like to come back on, because this research we didn't do yet. I think that's a field where still a lot of research can be done in. Which, for instance, if you look at the cultural connector, it's really about how to bring people together. And that's with how do communities actually live, how do they identify themselves, and how could you strengthen that. The same is with the potential of color to activate the public realm. We call it the social activators. So the question is, how could we work with that? How could we bring that a step further? I think there are great examples here already. These images I just collected in the last 2 days when I talked with, I think, 15 architects I was introduced to by Tony and Jose. I think the third theme, it's about the future investigation as public attractors. And this is really about navigating through the city. So imagine the cities, most of the cities, it's difficult to find your way, but you always remember some points. If you don't remember the points, actually, it's not really a wayfinding element. So if you have a wayfinding element that you remember, we call it the after image. It's something that's so strong as an image that you keep on remembering it. And that's, I think, something only architects and artists can create. So, does it have value? I would say yes, because if you can orientate yourself in a city, it means you can find your directions and you will have less accidents and things like that, which means that there's less stress in traffic. If there's less stress, you save a lot of money. start on a small scale, furniture. I think in furniture it's much easier to use color. So if we design furniture, this is presented last year in Milan, this year, we can easily use color, nobody's actually challenging it. If we use it in a building, it's immediately a problem. We talked for 1 year with the urban planners about the outside facade. We could not use color there. But imagine on the inside we use a color which actually changes color when the sun changes its direction. So when it's blue, for instance, you know it's lunchtime. When it's red, you know you can go home. And the same as with artists, you know, there are a lot of artists who work then similarly to the way how we are looking at our work. Or technically, you know, the LED is not invented only to produce light, it's also produced to communicate, is our belief. So designing facades where LED lights can play a role in without becoming commercially or too commercially is quite nice. So this is the largest LED facade in the world at the moment in Korea. And you literally can project images on the facade. So we made high resolution in one corner and then it slows down to low resolution. Hotel, saunas. So quickly back to our office. We built around 60, 70 projects at the moment in different countries, and we have more than 20 nationalities working in our office. We have around 150 staff with a base in Shanghai and a base in Amsterdam. And we are opening an office in Hong Kong soon. Office organization, we have to organize an office always hierarchically, but we also know the importance of the staff itself, the founders of the office. And it's great actually to work with Ben, because he really is motivating everybody to get out of yourself what you can get out of yourself, but also from the clients and the other people in the network. We have a team of directors and partners, and we want to be close to clients. That's why in our business cards we keep on mentioning that we are architects, because I think that's the key thing why we were studying architecture, not to become a partner or a manager or a director, but to become an architect. That also counts for our associate team. And with this team, we are actually traveling the world to meet our clients and make sure that we can deliver the products that we would like to deliver. We have our social events, because I think a good office should also organize good parties. And what is most important is we should not keep all the information within our office, but we should really communicate, work together, and spread the knowledge that we have, because you immediately can see that there's enormous potential in sharing knowledge and asking for help or asking questions. The thing is, if you don't do that, you for sure know that you won't get the answer. And a lot of advisors are very open to share knowledge and to work with knowledge. And I think that at the moment, also with all the information that's on the internet, it's easy to let other people and other architects or friends help out if you are dealing with a problem. Even if a client keep on telling you, well, it's confidential, you should not talk to somebody else about it because you are exclusively working for me, actually, that's bullshit. So, going back to Le Corbusier, I think Le Corbusier is great and fantastic, and he really changed time. But I think there's one thing, and that is a most important discussion within the modernistic world, is about color. So what he literally says is, take out everything. The discussion is about what is more important, color or a line. He says the line is more important than the color, because the color distracts from the line. If you take that literally all the time, you would actually get quite a boring world, we would argue. So it's okay to do it now and then and to really make brilliant pieces of architecture, but not every building that's built is a brilliant piece of architecture. I would like to take you to our design process for this project, where we followed the line. So it starts actually already with this line. It's a continuous line. You don't have to take your pen off. Next to that, we built models. And why the line is continuous is because the racing tracks of Mercedes are continuously. So they put a car on the track and they have to drive 1 million kilometers in a certain amount of time to test the engines. So that concept is quite interesting. They use the Nuremberg ring for that. But inside a building, for cars, it's also nice if you would move around like a car, that you would feel that you are the car almost. Next to that, logistically, it's important to understand that most of the people that go to a museum only go there for an hour or 2 hours. Only when you are going there with your family and you make a day trip out of it, you stay there all day. So what we said is you have one route which is actually the existing collection, and then another route are just the temporary exhibitions. And they're all shortcuts between the different exhibition floors. We use the principle of the MoMA and Centre Pompidou to create our logistics system, which is actually, if you would make a section, it looks like this. And I think you immediately would agree with me that if you have to make sections of a building, and they would look like this, that it's very difficult to explain it to a contractor, which is also a problem, and that's why we started to build up our models geometrically, just to make sure that we could explain to the contractors in 3D how our buildings are working. However, not every contractor understands this language, so I think it's really a large development that still needs to take place to be able to work really three-dimensionally, because the design tools are there, we can design with it, but the construction sites are not ready for it yet. So you still build large models, which is fine because they're also great to work in. This model is scale 1:43, and that's the scale of the small cars of Mercedes you have seen earlier. So that you literally can put the models, the small cars in the model and see how it works and how they drive. Of course, 3D modeling and BIM modeling is then the key to communicate, but we had constantly during construction site 2 people working on it and on the communication to make sure that mistakes could be altered. Yes, we had to make technical drawings, but we also know that if we would go 1 meter lower, the drawing would already be different. So, and that's also a bit related to our structural system, which is more or less runs like this. But we wanted to have free span, no columns, to give the car also the space that they need. With the engineers, we looked at the structural systems and how that could actually work. I think a building like this, with the software you have at engineering offices, it's actually great to see how you could generate these type of buildings. We constantly keep on adjusting the building with new information. So that generates quite some speed. Construction site, 23 hours a day, full-time people in shifts, 8 hours on, 8 hours off. That was necessary to meet the deadlines. So you can imagine that's quite an interesting pressure to work with. And I think also there, communication, again, is key, because everybody who wakes up in the morning and wants to go to his work would like to go to his work with a smile. So if you're frustrated for 2 years, it doesn't work. So you have to find a way in how it can be fun to run a construction yard like this. So that's what we tried. And of course, also cherish the moments that a piece comes out in the right way, that you're actually happy with what comes out of it. Facades. And here you see the large atrium where you enter, and the elevators that bring you up to the higher levels. We were able to design the elevators ourselves. And when you entered, this was the space where you were entering. And there was just, you don't see it here, but there's just one horse standing, which represents this 1 PK. And then you go down, and this is the point where this tornado came out of. That's where a jet engine was literally put in. And you walk down through the building. So designing the interior, like the exterior, I mean, they literally were able to put the cars on the wall. You know, it's great if you see like a row of cars, and they made sound next to it so that you, when a car was in the spotlight, you actually hear the sound of the car also, because every engine had its own sound. You know it when you are listening to the Formula One. So designing, you know, is for us like a kind of a process where we go through. And it's the same as with traveling, you know. If you all know that if you go to an airport, it looks like this. So the question is that the best way to organize an airport? This is actually what we would like, no? If you are flying, just a bit more comfort. This is how a plan of an airport looks like if you would analyze the logistic flows. And this is what you get. Because the luggage and security is more important than the people. So we proposed an airport like this, where the people actually would have a much easier flow through the airport. We had quite some discussions also with security and with luggage handling people, because they needed an extra scanner. But in the end, we were able to convince them that this would really be the right solution, that if you are standing in front of the building, that you literally can see the planes. So it's a small airport, so why make it too complicated? And we could design the air traffic control tower, which is also quite, I think, a nice tower to work on, because it's, one way it's super complicated, and on the other hand, it's the place where safety is being organized on a very high level. Pavilions. But imagine what happens in the night with a pavilion if you start to use light. I mean, people were married here. People made appointments there with Facebook, social media. I mean, it became a destination. Even if it's very small, it still became a destination. Or this, one of my favorites. It's built before the Second World War in the Netherlands to protect the Netherlands from attacks. I mean, you have to understand, we as the Netherlands, we have been conquered by the Spanish, by the French, by the Germans. So most of the times we were or in peace or we were conquered. This is a Dutch army, so you also understand why we are conquered all the time. And what we did was we were flooding actually our country. So Holland is for 1/3 under the sea level. So by going through the dikes, you were flooding your country again. The only thing we did not where we didn't pay attention to was that the Germans were using planes. So they were flying literally over our defense system. And our soldiers were in all these red dots, the bunkers, waiting for the Germans who didn't show up because they were parachuting behind them. So yeah, we lost the war. But we were able to build this nice pavilion on top of one of these bunkers. And also here, you know, it's one way, it's a house. You could actually literally live there. It has a shower, it has a toilet, it has a bed. But it's also a meeting place for board members of companies that are in distress, because the owner is the owner of one of the largest real estate companies in the world. DTZ Sadelhof. So working with these kind of top clients, which are very demanding, and experimenting with colors on exhibitions, also give us a kind of a perspective of, you know, what could we do? How could we trigger people to do more, and also a touch of fun in projects? We think it's quite essential, and we see for public projects like theaters or museums, you are able to do that. But as soon as you go to more commercial projects, it's not possible anymore. So this theater has a huge skylight, and then the way how the staircases go down, it's actually followed by color. You can program it, of course, in the computer and look at how it works in reality. And the interesting thing of this color is it changes color again. It goes from pink to purple to almost orange. So also the way how it is used then is also sometimes theatrical. So why not making a foyer where the foyer is also the meeting point like the theater itself? In most of the smaller cities, this theater is having a public function. So people from the neighborhood are going to the theater also to see the play, but also to be seen. So it's also a way of connecting communities. But you have to look at the sizes. I think this is about a village of 60,000 people. So 60,000 people, you can have 1 or 2 theaters. New computer technology to develop sound, to design with sound, literally by changing the facets and the fractions of this auditorium. And if I'm on the stage of this theater, I can talk without a microphone, and every seat can understand me. So that's what we could do with the acoustics in this room. And that's 750 chairs. Engineered, but important vibrations. So these pieces of rubber are between every piece of steel. And this is for the main auditorium. We had to, what you normally have with a car, you just put these elements underneath it so that you can reduce vibration. It's also, of course, something that you know from earthquake areas. So we made it orange to make it also a bit lively in the city. Together with the urban planner and the mayor, they were all really pushing us to make something that actually would have a bit of color, because the city was very colorless, gray, brown. To design these kinds of details, we put everything also in 3D to make sure that we could actually organize it. So organizing the theater as an architect is also looking at geometries and how structure works. So these are just structural models to see how we could design different beams. And we were just sitting for a few afternoons with the design team, sort of from trainee to director, just making these kinds of models to figure out how it worked. All the measurements need to be repeated. Details, 3D details. So we use Rhino for this. So this is a very cheap software package that can be also downloaded for free. And I think Rhino is a package that everybody, every student of architecture should use. It's like playing a game. So if you know how Rhino works, you go to the next level. And if you know how the next level works, you go to the advanced level. But also like all the smoke exhausts are behind the screens of the facade of the theater. So in Holland we love skies. We have groups of painters that use light because of the sky, like Rembrandt and Van Gogh. We have painters that are only designing skies, or where that we call it the School of The Hague, which is a very famous school only collecting and painting clouds because of the light. And that's because we are in the Rhine Delta, very low. The clouds are also very low, so the light reflects into the clouds and into the sea and back. So you get a very interesting contrast to work with. So using the clouds as a concept, or using light as a concept, or even makeup, or Japanese mangas as color concepts, is something we are looking at in our office to see how we could actually plan and design with color. Or Riley, an artist. This is a building in Stuttgart, where we use this color also to play with how the buildings works, or a laboratory building. Just opening up in key corners. Inside, bright orange. It's great to be there. And there are only 8 to 10 students and scientists working on one floor in these laboratories. This Stuttgart Virtual Engineering Center. And especially the way how the color changes through the day is fantastic to see. And the inside we played a bit more subtle with the colors in the staircases. So you see the yellow here, the orange there. But I think we would like to use it a bit more, but our German client was also afraid of that. They were afraid that it would distract too much. But also highways, you know, why not use sound screens on highways and give it a nice color? Or small tunnels, or all these things you have next to highways. By giving it a color, this is flyovers, you could actually make it more lively. And it's also recognized because this highway, everybody who lives in the area of that small city, they know about it, but they also know that if they're driving there, that they are almost at home and so they don't miss their exit. Because in the car when you're driving, a lot goes automatically. So you're not always paying attention because you're still thinking about your work, about what you have to do. The Horticultural Expo in Hangzhou, we are working on at the moment. The 25th of April, we have the official opening. And I'm still a bit concerned. And probably you would like to see what your reaction is. But the idea is 4 pavilions. This is the main venue pavilion. And it goes into different ribbons. And all the ribbons have a color and go to different gardens. Our concept is a bit based on how we would like to walk around the building, and that is also the shape of the Chinese rose. You can go in different ways, and we used also the different colors for the ribbons in the facade. And I think that if you see this, knowing that it needs to be finished the 25th of April, get a bit worried. But what about cities in Asia? Large cities like this, a lot of concrete, they all look the same. So how can you identify something? And you also know it from Hong Kong and other cities. So we think that there's quite some opportunity still to test and experiment on an urban level, also with color. So we try to work with clients also on these color concepts now to see how we could bring in more color to use it as destinations or places to come to, so that you can find your way actually back. It doesn't work actually always. And most of the colors the clients think are too bright, they don't want to use it, while it's not really bright, but still they are afraid of using the colors, which is, I think, a pity. So the next project, also in Korea, we are working on is also trying to convince the client to use more color. And this is in the city of Daegu, and the advantage of Daegu is that it's a city where fashion is key. So it's really a fashion city, and they also have urban planning regulations, and in the urban planning regulations, color is a key element. So they actually tell for certain areas that you need to study how color is being implemented. So we were quite fascinated by that and started to look at also the Bojachi, who is what is more traditional, and our pointless paintings of our Dutch artists, and how we could actually use that to brighten up the buildings. So then you get to the next level of Rhino, which is Grasshopper. And in Grasshopper, you are able to connect parameters to every piece of element that you're designing in Rhino. And because of that, you can start programming it literally. So with all the colors you could plan and use, you could actually start making more orange pieces or yellow pieces that's warmer, and green and darker pieces. And here you see what happens if you can start to program the facades of the building. It actually generates the colors of the facades. Well, of course, it needs to be integrated with the full planting schemes. Moving into commercial advertising, this is what you normally have in most of the cities, and we think it's better or nicer when you don't have all the advertisement, but that you have more one identity inside one building. So for this building, we were asked to look at the facade and to design the facade. So this is quite a good concrete building, I would say. And we really collected discs and hang it all around the facade to reduce the advertisement. And then there's one piece where you could actually show the main advertisements of the building. And during the night, it looks like this. So actually, literally, there's an LED facade behind it, and you could actually light up the entire facade. I think that this became one of the coolest buildings in Korea, and it's in Gangnam. So a lot of young people went there. Because the young people went there, the parents went there, and they earned back these investments in half a year, our client said. So, you know, quite valuable actually if you would compete with other competitors. So we see actually our ceilings as catwalks, because that's what you see. The floors you almost don't see when the people are walking on it. So to orientate yourself, it's better to use the catwalks. The same with this project in Taiwan, where we also tested how we could work with light and glass and materials. So with this project and also with some other projects, we are introduced by the team of Louis Vuitton. We did some projects with them, and they introduce us to projects where they feel that there is a problem for their own marketing. This is the inside, so also a large atrium. Again, the question, how can you bring up the people? So here you see the way how an atrium then starts to change shape, literally. So it's not only about, I think, looking at the right materials or trying to find the right concepts or introducing the right techniques. It's also about, you know, what effect do you want to create? What's your vision on it? And I think as architects, that's what we have to do. We have to keep on surprising people, also in an urban fabric, if we want to make these urban anchor points that you recognize when you drive through the city. And of course, not everything has to be a spectacle. It could also be more calmly. But it's so nice that you can actually literally see yourself reflected in these bulbs. And we tested this, of course, in our office first, before we put 4,000 or 5,000 of these bulbs on a facade. But it's a very simple detail, because you just have this element that you're screwing on a facade and nothing can go wrong, you would say. And then with LEDs, you can light the facade. So the interior. And here also to design a skylight like this, we use also the scripting software. That's actually, then you get to the last level after grasshopper, so kangaroo. And you start to really script down exactly the patterns of how the patterns can be used, how the cutting pieces can be used, and that's all transformed to Excel. And Excel is actually, the lists of Excel go to the manufacturers, and the manufacturers mark the pieces, and on site you have to put the pieces back together, which is normally the biggest problem to do. But if you're doing that, you are able to design great atriums that actually also are spectacular when you are underneath it. And that's exactly the effect you would like to create with an atrium, because we think that if you have this after image, and if you can create the right stage, it's, you know, the same as with theater, and you can create the right emotion, people will come back to it. And I think you also know that this emotion is important in a city and in a city fabric. So that's what I would like to share with you. So first of all, in our opinion, it's about the people and the techniques and the way how you collaborate. And second of all, it's also try to experiment and try to challenge everybody to make the world a better place. Thank you.
Bueno, vamos a abrir un espacio para preguntas con Gerard, así que pues, es un buen momento para preguntarle todas las cuestiones técnicas, las cuestiones del equipo, las cuestiones de cómo opera la oficina en diferentes puntos, en fin, una serie de cuestiones constructivas, de diseño, de operación, etcétera. Creo que es una oportunidad que no hay que dejar de escapar. Entonces, cualquiera que tenga una pregunta, si levanta la mano, le acercamos el micrófono. Y con gusto traducimos. Las pueden hacer en español, obviamente. Si no, sí.
Bueno, quería saber cuánto es el tiempo que hacen, cuánto tiempo se tarda en hacer la investigación para de ahí llegar a un proyecto arquitectónico o algún boceto.
How much time do you spend researching towards building a design?
Yeah, because of the speed of the projects, we do research in projects, but that could be 3 weeks or 6 weeks. And we do research outside of projects. So we try to have research trajectories, for instance, for materials or for sustainable means outside of the projects. So we have 6 projects, for instance, that are funded by the European Union, which are about future materials, and that's all in collaboration with universities and manufacturers. So I think that doing research, you have to organize differently. I mean, otherwise you don't have the time because you're totally occupied by projects. And as soon as, I think most of you who are working as architects, you know how difficult it is to make time available to start thinking about something new. But the projects are the opportunity to test it. So if you have ideas that are being developed and you can add it to a project or test it on a project, then you can also experiment. And that's actually, so I think, yeah, the thinking times, sometimes you have something in your mind already for 10 years and this is the right project to test it. And in other cases, you just are totally blank when you start and you have to talk to the client and the local architects and advisors to see what is the best idea and to figure out what would be the best way to service the client or the building or the community.
A ver si quieren hago una pequeña traducción. Dice que más o menos en cualquier proyecto se tardan 3 a 6 semanas en hacer investigación por lo general, pero después tienen investigaciones paralelas sobre materiales, sobre cuestiones de sustentabilidad y otras cuestiones implicadas que van en paralelo. Y por otro lado, a veces están investigando sobre formas, productos, etcétera, durante 10 años, incluso una idea que puedan mantener en la mente, y hay un proyecto en particular que les aparece, que se les presenta, al cual le pueden abonar toda esta investigación y a partir de ahí surge y aparece, pero instantáneo no es.
Excuse me, Gerard. I would like to know what's the key for an international architecture studio to operate effectively in so many countries, so many environments, because it must be very tough to apply different principles to the, it's different to make a building in Korea than in the Netherlands.
Well, you also have to look at from the fun side. So the adventure is nice, to meet other cultures and other people. I mean, regulations you have always, but regulations are also there to be challenged. And to do that, you need local input. So we always work with local architects that know the situation. And I think that building in other cultures is also enriching. So our designers and our architects, I mean, not everybody wants to work in Asia, not everybody wants to work in the US, so they also choose where they would like to work, which is normally based on their own background. So we have architects that were born in Africa because their parents were working there, and now they would like to work again in Africa, but we don't have a project in Africa. So we're trying to get projects there, we are analyzing the market, but if we will get a project there, I also know that we really don't know how to build it there. So, and the funny thing is, the other architects in our office also don't know it. So the first step we do is we start to make friends. And I think that's the easiest way to go for, and it doesn't need to be on LinkedIn or Facebook. We could also fly there and just meet people and see if we have the same thoughts, if we have the same interests, and if we have that, I mean, they know how to build, they know the politicians normally, or the way how it is organized, how the situations work. And they also know if there is an interest in an international architect, because why should you fly in an expensive international architect if you can do it yourself? So there needs to be a reasoning and a need also to do that. And that doesn't necessarily mean that we are expensive, but normally you have to pay more for international architects. So I think it's for us we started by just telling ourselves, you know, we want to be an international office. We only did projects in the Netherlands, and by doing the competitions and going to other countries, we were able to bring in some international projects.
Thank you.
Bueno, comento un poquito esta pregunta. Lo que preguntaban es cómo un despacho puede ser exitoso en diferentes partes del mundo, cuál es la clave o qué es lo que se necesita. Entonces lo que Gerard comenta es que primero tienen que bueno, conocer un poco los diferentes países, más allá de las redes sociales o lo que sea, van y visitan. También comentó sobre la normativa, que la normativa siempre uno tiene que saber de qué se trata en otros países porque va cambiando. También hacen amigos y trabajan con arquitectos locales de tal forma que se puedan vincular con los temas locales, involucrarse en la cultura y entender un poco qué es lo que está sucediendo en ese sitio. También en particular, por qué es que los están llamando si es una oficina extranjera. Entonces entender también cuál es el deseo que tiene este cliente de poder llamar a alguien que es de fuera, que posiblemente… Bueno, casi seguro que va a ser más caro que uno local, no necesariamente, pero la etiqueta no, o sea, la etiqueta de lo caro no está directamente ligada, pero sí puede ser un efecto que se ligue. ¿Alguna otra pregunta? I wanted to ask you a question. Since most of them are students, what would be the profile that UNstudio is looking for students in terms of hiring? Like, what are the skills, what are the abilities, what are the knowledge bases you're looking in people? And probably you can tell us about your own story. How did you start in UNstudio? How were you abducted probably from the German practice you had, and how did you start in UNstudio?
Well, I think as UNstudio, we always say we are looking for smart people. You know, that's very wide spread to define that. Some people really in our office also think we should only have postgraduates from the AA and Harvard, but I personally don't believe in that. I think that, of course, it's very good to have some of these architects, but in the end, we also have, you know, if you really want to build something, you need somebody who can communicate with the fire department or with the building inspector or with the subcontractors. So finding the right team, like with soccer, you know, if you have too many people in the front of the field, you will never win. If you can really make the right setup, and for every project it's different, you can win. But the only way to win is when you collaborate. And that's what we do. And you know, my story is quite simple. I finished my study. I studied for 9 years. The education was 6. So I spent a bit of time also developing myself, I would say. My parents didn't think about it like that. So I also had to work in the last few years of my career as a student. Then when I started to work, I worked for an office that's actually really conservative, and I just learned how to go through all the stages of preliminary design, design development, construction drawings, and then construction administration, and then finishing the buildings. After 4 years, my girlfriend was finishing her study, and so she got a job, and we decided that I could also go work in a nice office for a few years to with less money, so less fee paid. And that's what I did. So I applied at 4 offices and was hired in UNstudio. And the management team said very simply, you just work here for 1 year and then your contract is ended. So I thought, nice, I just enjoy it. And that's what I did. I just enjoy it. And every disaster we had, I just keep on thinking, you know, it's fun, let's just enjoy it. But, you know, standing in yourself on a construction site, knowing it's totally wrong, but yeah, what should you do, you know? The only thing you can do is ask for help and talk with people. So my contract was extended with 1 more year, which was more because they forgot to extend it, and then legally you are obliged to extend it. And in the 2nd year, the entire management team left because they went for another career. So the ones that told me I would get a contract for 1 year were gone, and the other ones that were stepping into the management team didn't know that. So I got a 3rd year, and in the Netherlands, after 3 years, you need a fixed contract. Then in the 3rd year, our business development went a bit down because the 2 people of the management team left, and I got the opportunity to do some acquisition, and I just asked some friends if they had work for us, and they were happy to give some projects or to put us on some shortlists. And when I was bringing in work, Ben said it's time to join the management team. And then it was easy, of course, because then you take the decisions. That was like 14 years ago.
Bueno, traducimos rápido. La pregunta que le hice es ¿qué tipo de persona están buscando para contratar al despacho, ya que la mayoría de los que están aquí son estudiantes? ¿Cuáles son las características o las habilidades en general que se están privilegiando para contratar? Entonces, lo primero que menciona es que siempre tienen que ser listos, por supuesto, tienen que ser gente inteligente, pero son de un amplio espectro, o sea, no necesariamente concentrados en una u otra habilidad, sino en diferentes habilidades de tal suerte que se pueda concretar un equipo que pueda comunicarse entre ellos y por supuesto con la gente de fuera, que en algún momento se puedan comunicar con la gente de los bomberos para ver las medidas de seguridad u otro tipo de cuestiones. Entonces, bueno, este tipo de habilidades por supuesto son muy buenas, no necesariamente el que tengan un posgrado, pero sí tienen mucha gente interesante. Después, en particular, cuenta sobre su historia, que de alguna forma estuvo primero estudiando la carrera, algunos años trabajando en alguna oficina interesante, y dice que aplicó a 4, entonces eventualmente lo contrataron en UNstudio, lo contrataron por 1 año, le dijeron, te vamos a hacer un contrato por 1 año. Y bueno, dijo, no, pues perfecto, ¿no? Yo estoy bien con 1 año, y después, acabando el año, le extendieron un contrato por otro año, porque vieron que era bastante bueno. Y entonces, acabando este 2.º año, parece que toda la administración desapareció, esa gente que le había dicho, solo vas a estar 1 año, le dijeron, ya se había ido. Entonces vino la renovación del 3.er año, entró una nueva administración y de acuerdo a la normativa holandesa le piden que después de contratos temporales, me parece que después del 2.º año tiene que ser un contrato fijo. Entonces la nueva administración le hizo el contrato fijo y siguió trabajando y eventualmente invitó a algunos amigos a que empezaran a colaborar en UNstudio y llegó un punto donde Ben Van Berkel le dijo, bueno, pues tienes que ser ya parte definitiva y así es como creció. Dice que este ha sido un proceso prácticamente de 14 años, donde empezó con un contrato temporal de 1 solo año.
Yeah, so you never know what happens. That's life.
¿Alguna otra pregunta? La traducción es gratis. Que por cierto es una palabra que compartimos con los holandeses, lo estábamos comentando hace rato. I'll go for a second question. You were talking about color, how is part of the process of design, and how sometimes you flip the laws, like in the foil, that they said you cannot put a color, but you found a way to put some color inside. Is color always applied as something extra, or is it part of the tectonics, is part of the discourse, or is part of the fundamentals of the process of design, or is it just added at the end?
No, well, we have a discussion in our office also about it. I think it's an essential part of the design because it creates depth, for instance, in buildings. So if you are outside of a building and you see color inside, you create a perspective. And I think that's something that the modern painters also proved in their paintings, because flat paintings became 3-dimensional. And I also believe that also with our projects already, you can see that it works as an urban activator and that people are coming back to the buildings. And so I think you have to really strategize it from the beginning and also think about what colors you would like to use. At least that's my belief in the projects, because it's also an emotional link you make with the color and with the project. So it needs to be the right color. So that's the biggest challenge. How do you find the right color? So I also asked that to the architects I met here in Mexico, like how do you decide on color? Because it's also something we are always like looking at, like how do you argue about color? What's the parameter?
Bueno, la pregunta es si el color es una parte fundamental o meramente un añadido en el proceso del diseño. Entonces lo que comenta es que desde el principio se toma en consideración el color. Es una discusión que tienen al despacho, dentro del despacho constantemente, si tal o cual color va a ser el correcto, el indicado para cierto tipo de proyecto. Dice que el color también es un productor de profundidad que nos permite generar una percepción diferente dentro de los proyectos, y que también tiene un estímulo sensorial, el cual permite tener un sentimiento para con el edificio. Esta sensibilidad de alguna forma la comparten, y dice que el tiempo que ha estado aquí ha estado platicando con los arquitectos mexicanos, que de alguna forma muchos nos distinguimos por el color que ponemos en las obras. Entonces, pues nuevamente esta discusión, ¿qué color, en qué momento, por qué y demás? Me parece que es una discusión, it seems like it's a discussion that keeps on going, and it's a cultural subject. Parece que es una discusión que sigue yendo y que tiene algunos matices culturales. Entonces, bueno, no sé si ustedes tengan alguna pregunta, porque si no yo me sigo aquí.
Sí, hay.
De sus proyectos en los que ha usted participado, ¿cuál ha sido el que más le ha impactado en su carrera como arquitecto personalmente?
Among your projects, which one has been the one that has had a bigger impact in your person? Like personally, which one is the one that you would say that, oh, this is a benchmark project?
Yeah, I always hope that it's a project that still has to come, but I think in our work, I think for instance, the Mercedes-Benz project it's a key work, let's say it like that. That is a game changer, because you work with a company like Mercedes that develops a building like a car. And when something is wrong with a car, like a mirror, they put a director on it with a full team that has to change and solve it within a limited amount of time, which means that every time Mercedes was putting a director on it, we had to put project managers and architects on that specific detail to run as fast as they were running. So for us, these kind of game changers are crucial in understanding that our profession is changing, and I think that, yeah, we have some projects now in the pipeline, and I have the feeling that some of them have the same magnitude, could have the same effect. So yeah, at the moment I think for us Mercedes is one of the best, the most important game changes that we had.
Bueno, menciona que uno de los proyectos más importantes justamente es este museo que hicieron para la Mercedes-Benz, que justamente se confrontaron con gente, es decir, con Mercedes, que saben de diseño y que saben de ingeniería. Entonces les hacían exigencias como si fuera el diseño de un coche, que de alguna forma ellos tenían que contrarrestar o contraponer o recibirlo con gente, administradores y gestores de proyecto que estuvieran atentos a todas las cuestiones que les imponía Mercedes, ¿no? que parecía que tenían una ruta crítica importante en el desarrollo del proyecto bueno, esto se tiene que hacer pronto, como si fuera un coche a final de cuentas, pero al final era un edificio, y entonces ellos entendieron otra forma de conceptualizar el proyecto, y bueno, este es uno de los proyectos más importantes. Al principio me faltó mencionar que él decía que le gustaría pensar que los proyectos que están por venir son los mejores proyectos, y luego también cerró diciendo que tienen algunos proyectos que están en proceso que seguramente tendrán bastante fuerza en el desarrollo de la carrera de UNstudio. ¿Alguna otra pregunta? Bueno, si no hay más preguntas… sí, parece que hay más preguntas.
Hey, how depend is like UNstudio into industrial design? Because you said that sometimes you design like stuff for the inside of the building, but is it like only when you design the building that you design stuff, or you design like just because?
Yeah, actually, Ben, one of the founders, he studied product design before he decided to do architecture. So, and at a certain moment, he in the meeting said, "Yeah, I would like to also design again a tray or a coffee can." And we said, "Yeah, I mean, yeah, why not? Let's just start doing that." And I mean, in the end, as an architect, most of the work you do is anyway for free. So why not do what you like? So we decided to contact some companies like Alessi, Walter Knol, and ask them if we could design something for them, and they actually repeated back that they said yes. So that was nice for us, so that we could start designing our first tray, and then we had a tea and coffee tray, and then we decided to design a couch. So, but then we more or less thought that we already knew how it worked. So the couch was very expensive. And that was because the structural and the engineering part was not, we didn't think about it correctly. So, but now we are trying to produce 6 to 7 pieces of furniture every year. We have a team of, like a small team working on it. And that's about tables and furniture, but also glasses and everything that we think is nice to work on at the moment. So they also, these 3 people in our office who are doing that, every year they go around the office and they ask, like, what do you think would be nice to design? Which is okay, because then they make a long list, and then from the long list they make a short list, and that's what we are going to design. So we could actually, and we do sometimes the same with the projects. We just ask our architects also, like, would you like to work, where do you like to work on? And if somebody says, yeah, I would like to work on a stadium or on a nice swimming pool or something like that, we can also try to find the projects. And I think it's important to also think about, yeah, what do you want, where do you want to work on? Because it's easier then to look for the projects.
Sí, lo que comenta es sobre el diseño industrial que hace también UNstudio, que bueno, siempre está esta inquietud y que empezaron a acercarse, por ejemplo, con Alessi para el desarrollo de una mesa, y que, bueno, en su momento tuvo algunos fallos y aprendieron del proceso, pero que esta inquietud continúa en el despacho a tal punto que tienen 3 personas por lo menos enfocadas al desarrollo de proyectos de mobiliario y de equipamiento, que lo que hacen es ir por la oficina preguntándole a los diferentes arquitectos que participan en la oficina sobre qué proyectos les gustaría hacer de mobiliario o en la escala industrial. Entonces hacen una lista larga que después de alguna forma de seleccionarla hacen cortita, y con esto acaban produciendo muebles que se hacen, ¿no? Dijo que 60 y tantos muebles salían por año. ¿Alguna otra pregunta? Creo que es la última pregunta que tomamos.
Gracias. Bueno, debido a que la arquitectura es como una parte que necesita varias disciplinas para desarrollarse y mucho más dentro de un despacho, ¿cómo es que se unen o se vuelven uno solo todos estos enfoques que surgen de las diferentes disciplinas para desarrollar un proyecto?
Since the architecture studio has to do with many disciplines, how is the convergence of these different disciplines in order to make a project?
Yeah, that's a very good question. It's actually most important is to find the right people. You know, it's the same as when you want to find some friends. You want people that respect you and that understand you. And the same as with advisors. If you want to design something special, you need somebody that can really help you with it. For instance, an example is Peter Rice was a structural engineer who worked with Renzo Piano, Jean Nouvel, Norman Foster, Richard Rogers, and when he died, all the projects he was working on were put on hold because he was the only one who could calculate it. But I think finding the right people, and sometimes it's like the best there is one way, and the other way, you know, you can also grow together. So a lot of these, like Peter Rice or Cecil Belmont and Chris Carroll, like the engineers or Werner Sobek, they have all grown together. So the only thing is, what you have to do is, you know, believe in your community and that you will become an example for the rest. I mean, in our office, the average age is also around 30. So we have a very young office. And the only thing is that we keep on telling ourselves that we are able to do it. And we are able to find the right people and the right engineers. And I think that, especially now with all the social media, and everybody's very accessible. So, and you know, you can always ask, and they can always say no. Most of them, if the question is good, they feel triggered, and then they will join. And then you can see if it can be a friend or not. So it's. Yeah, well, of course, you know, I mean, it's not only work, it's also the social events. I mean, I had to go to a cocktail party last night, but it was fun. It was nice to meet and talk. You talk about different things normally when you are on a party, or when you are in the weekend meeting friends, or when you go to a soccer game or something like that. But it's as important in a social life as working on a project. And I think you need that actually to also take a bit of a distance to evaluate for yourself if it's the right direction. If what I said in the pyramid, you know, this point of wisdom, normally you don't get it behind a computer. You know, you get it when you are in the bath or in the shower or on your bike or in the car. Then you have this moment that you think, that's it. That's what I have to do. Or somebody calls you with that idea, but he normally didn't get it while he was working on AutoCAD behind his computer.
Thank you.
Bueno, lo que menciona es que tienen que conseguir la gente correcta de cada una de las disciplinas para incorporarla. Pone de ejemplo a Peter Rice, que era el ingeniero que trabajaba con Rogers Piano y con Jean Nouvel. Entonces, que cuando fallece este ingeniero, tuvieron que detener todos los proyectos porque prácticamente él era la pieza clave, era la persona indicada para poderlo hacer. Entonces, esto es muy importante, encontrar quién es la persona clave. Y esto, bueno, que cada vez es más fácil tener acceso a las personas porque las redes sociales es mucho más fácil encontrar a la gente. Entonces, encontrar la gente específica para cada uno de los proyectos es importante. Y cómo se relacionan, cómo empiezan a entablar esta relación con la oficina tiene que ver con un proceso que puede ser un proceso donde crecen juntos, donde van de la mano, de alguna forma se van desarrollando. Y que bueno, que no solo tiene que ver con el trabajo, sino con el desarrollo también de conocerse por fuera, conocerse a nivel social, que permite de alguna forma obtener las ideas y que las ideas normalmente no salen estando detrás de la computadora, sino que pueden ser en el baño mientras uno se baña, o puede ser en el autobús, etcétera, ¿no? Que es cuando aparecen las ideas y es cuando se puede generar este proceso para ir desarrollando el proyecto. Bueno, como mencionó, sería la última pregunta que tomábamos. Pues queremos agradecer especialmente a Gerard Loozekoot por esto, y le vamos a entregar una constancia a nombre del arquitecto Marcos Massari, quien es director de la facultad. Y la constancia dice: Universidad Nacional Autónoma de México, la Facultad de Arquitectura. Pero como ustedes ya se la conocen, mejor la digo en inglés. I'm going to say it in English because it's easier for you to understand. So, the National Autonomous University of Mexico Architecture School beholds and gives the following recognition to Gerard Loozekoot from UNstudio, thanks to his participation as a lecturer within Miércoles FA, and por mi raza hablará el espíritu. That's a hard one. It's our motto, and it's
Just say it in Spanish.
okay.
I'll try to.
Through the spirit, my race will talk, but it's not race like in the racist kind of way. Anyway,
I started to wonder.
Marcos Massari, director. Entonces, le entregamos el reconocimiento y asimismo entregamos 3 libros que son publicaciones. We also would like to give you three publications from our school. And the first is from the Central Campus. It's a description. And the second one is a urbanism compendium of different ideas from different professors and professionals that work with the school. And third is one of our magazine's number. And this is a special also about the campus. So I hope you enjoy it and spread the word.
Thank you very much. It was really a pleasure to be here and I'm still looking forward to an excursion to see the site and because I am really anxious to see everything and to learn. Thank you.
Thank you very much.